Hey guys, I'm here talking about Metal Gear Solid 5 or Metal Gear Solid V as some people prefer it because that actually is important to the story. In any case, Metal Gear Solid 5, what can I say about this game? It's really one of those weird things where, I think this has the best gameplay out of the whole series and it's just so advanced and technical to what you can actually do in the world. But in terms of story and all the other aspects of Metal Gear that we've come to know and love, it's actually the weakest. It's probably the most fun to play around because it's meant to be open world and kind of a sandbox experience, but again, it's just kind of odd. There are a couple other odd things about this game. One is that it was a cross-gen game, so this was kind of as the PS4 was coming in and it had a different port to each one. This was also where there was controversy over the fact they removed Hideo Kojima's name from the game, and Konami really wanted to have full control over the IP, and Kojima was done with them as well. And I think he was even banned or something from coming to the Game Awards to accept an award for this game, which is just insane. And especially because his name is literally everywhere in the game except on the main cover, which I find is very, very funny. And there's also the additional weirdness of the fact that Metal Gear Ground Zeroes, or Metal Gear 5 Ground Zeroes, was actually a game that came out right after, or rather right before this, and it was essentially a demo and a prequel to this game, and just that in itself is just a very strange, weird thing. Ground Zeroes itself was kind of a one map, a very small, like, secluded map and a base, and like it's meant to be played over and over again and get different parts of the story. And there's two prisoners inside, and you have to extract them. And it's basically to do a level extraction experience. But it was kind of meant almost again like a demo, but it was sold at like kind of full price, and it confused some people. And that was actually done because they were running out of funding making this game, and they needed to release this as like to boost their sales and to get enough money to actually finish this project. So that kind of gives you an idea of exactly how big this game is, and also how ambitious it is, and what the gaming industry was becoming. It was just becoming way too restrictive and expensive to actually make games now, that they had to make mini games to sell in order to fund their larger projects. And this is a huge project. That being said, there are actually only two maps in this game. Well, besides the home base, which is your mother base, you also have Africa and Afghanistan as your main locations. The world map itself does not change, but the story missions alter of course, the characters and environment in these areas of the map, but you can always return to them wherever you want and just take out the enemies normally. So what is the premise to Metal Gear Solid 5? It takes place in the 1980s during the near end of the Cold War, and you play as Big Boss, seemingly who is trying to build his PMC and strike back against the control of the world government, the Patriots, and the United States. It's a very interesting game because this essentially is the bad guy of the entire series, and we kind of have this in-between spot between Metal Gear Solid 3 and Metal Gear Solid 1, and the other Metal Gear games for that matter, that needs to be filled. And so this is kind of the becoming and the transformation of the Big Boss to the villain that we know him in the modern era. And it's funny, though, that, of course, for any Metal Gear fan who basically needs to I'll just say it, study the series, because it is such a compendium of different wide spread information, that the allegiances of Big Boss from a villain to hero and back are so convoluted and complicated that it's really hard to keep track of. So whether or not you're a hero or a villain in this game, it might be very subjective, honestly. So mechanically, the game is amazing. The amount of things you can plunder, the amount of weapons in this game, the sheer grotesquity of it all is just immense. There's so many systems. There's the Mother Base operation system. that basically, you basically have a operating budget where if you go into the red, you'll lose morale. In the introduction of the game, you basically recruit soldiers to Mother Base, which is essentially this floating base in the Seychelles off the coast of Africa, which acts as your main operating area. And it's this tax haven slash industrial thing that you're operating and constructing. And of course, even though it's the 80s, you have a lot of very advanced technology. Something else, just speaking about the time frame in the 80s, is that they actually have a lot of licensed music from that era in this game, which I found very surprising, like Spin Me Right Round. I was just very shocked to see that in the compendium of sound files you can play while you're on your mission. This is definitely the most technically advanced Metal Gear game, where you just have, you have so many different options of how to attack an enemy base that it's almost limitless. So you have your typical assault rifles. You can buy attachments for it and R&D for it, for extended mags, silencers. The full Call of Duty loadout, Supreme. You have it all. You have different pistols. You have special weapons. You have, I think you can get a Super Soaker for like that one special fire enemy. You have mortars, rocket launchers, grenade launchers, stun grenades. You can attach flashlights to every weapon. You can attach silencers to every weapon. You have multiple shotguns. You have, an array of snipers to choose from. It's really kind of insane. You also have vehicles and companions in this game. You have your horse called D-Horse. The PMC's name is Diamond Dogs, so you also have a dog you can bring with you, and a lot of things start with the letter D to designate that. You also have later your first companion is the sniper Quiet. You also get a companion slash vehicle, which is a mini gecko mech, which you can use to ride around the Sahara, and also equip an array of things from flamethrowers to Gatling guns to it to fully utilize it in the field. Of course, you get an array of different camos that you can equip, from night drab, things for stealth, to I think even a tuxedo at the end of the game. What's interesting is the way you upgrade weapons in this game. It's a huge upgrade tree. So your R&D time goes to, you make the pistol Mark II, and then you need to make enough money and credits by doing multiple side missions to basically take it through this tree of R&D development to create like almost 50 different sub variations of the same weapon, which I do think is really actually too much. It's like, this is when games are kind of like saying, we're giving you too many options, and I just want to have like the normal just gun. Just give me the normal gun, basically. But the array of things you can do in this game is pretty crazy. You have things like decoys, which make a fake Solid Snake and say, kept you waiting, huh? And you can upgrade that also to to have voice lines and different inflatable options, and all that kind of stuff. So again, so the story component to this game is it takes place during the 80s, and it's kind of really hard to piece together if you didn't actually play Ground Zeroes or Peace Walker, which was the PSP only game, which I now think is available on the modern consoles via download. But there was just a lot in this game that kind of will leave players out of the loop. The one thing I guess it makes this game very kind of un-Metal Gear is that it usually starts off as a very clear-cut, normal military operation, and descends into this weird, interesting, chaotic array of crazy characters and supernatural powers. And that is interesting in this game because it's actually the opposite. The first couple hours of this game, you have these supernatural things going on. There's this man on fire, which, turns everything on fire wherever he goes. There is what looks to be, the protege or the early version of Psycho Mantis. You have enemies, mind controlling each other. You have all these supernatural things and phenomena going on in the environment. And once you're out of that tutorial section, you basically take the role of a mercenary warlord. And so that's the one thing that's very different about this game, is that it starts off with the fantasy and then goes into reality. And it's just very, very weird. Also, the cutscenes in this game, despite this game being mostly gameplay, the cutscenes in this game just feel very onerous, I guess is the right word. You just feel like I don't know, like everything takes so long to finish, and then once it's over, you're kind of just thrown into the gameplay again, and you're just kind of like, okay, what am I doing again? That being said, I mean, the gameplay is very fun. It really rewards players to repeat different kinds of environments and areas, and to have them go out and explore. So for players who don't mind doing the same thing over and over again, or like redoing the same mission in an interesting way, you can definitely do that, and it's very much encouraged in this game. But the problem is there's not really a story motivation for that, and I feel that's where there's a bit of imbalance between these two things. Again, I'll go back. I'm jumping all over the place here, but back to the Mother Base operations, because there's so much of it. Not only do you have to manage morale and troops and budgeting and stuff like that, you can also expand your base in this little base expansion minigame. You have this little kind of PDA thing which you pop up, which has a hologram on it. Don't ask me why, it's the 80s. And you basically use that to manage your entire army and all of your supplies and whatnot. You basically, so the way this works is you can find soldiers and equipment and weapons and ammo in the field and even vehicles and bring them back with you via this Fulton extraction device, which is a balloon thing, which is kind of, funny. And it basically flies them up and a plane catches them and they brings them back to base. And so there's this whole thing where you can scan enemies and find out, oh, this guy's really good at technical work, and this guy's really good at medical work, and you can distribute the soldiers throughout your base. And it's kind of a funny thing that you just kidnap them and they just agree to work with you, which is hilarious. And of course, when you go back to the base, they all say, good to see you, boss. You can beat the crap out of them, you can tranquilize them, you can almost kill them, but they'll still idolize you, which is really, really funny. Also, a really funny little thing in this game is that there are like anime posters and things like that you can equip on your boxes. And this is the one game that I saw a completely new take on cardboard box mechanics. You can lie down in your box and use it to slide down a sand slope and take out enemies that way, knock them out. You can also use your box to jump up and prop up, like a little cardboard cutout of an anime chick, and that'll distract the guards. You can also pop out of your box to activate, a slowdown time and shoot the guards. And actually, that's probably the biggest change in this game, is that when you're initially spotted, it doesn't go straight into alert mode. It actually slows down time and allows the player to respond to that threat. And that might seem game breaking, but if there are multiple enemies and you don't spot the ones you have to take out, because it does move slow for you as well, it gives you a moment to take out that one guard. But if multiple guards spot you, it's kind of over at that point, and then you're going to have to fight all the reinforcements. This is definitely the most combat-focused Metal Gear game. Sneaking it is possible and is encouraged, but again, if the alarm goes off, you can go into full combat mode. Another main aspect of this game is the way you basically get to and anywhere in the map is you fly in via fast travel, via Pequod, your main helicopter extractor, and the way you get out of the environment is, of course, via Pequod. And so if you have a VIP you have to call in the helicopter. Again, there's so many options vis-a-vis. This is like almost a military sim, but a military dream sim for all the things you wish you could do. And so the helicopter, you can also call it in for air support. It can, equip it with missiles and Gatling guns, the different surface-to-air or air-to-surface missiles. You can give it napalm. You can frickin' call in airstrikes of sleep gas, nerve gas, bombs, napalm. The amount of options and the sheer destructive ability in this game is just insane. The only thing that would make this game more insane is destructible cover, but if that was the case, I don't think there'd be much of it left by the time you were done with it. Again, it's just crazy how many mechanics are at play and at work here in this game, and it honestly is, to an extent, extremely overwhelming. And it was kind of positioned by Konami to be a highly replayable game, despite the idea that this is a very heavily story-based game. They wanted to create a sort of the first live service game, I feel. Because, again, the map doesn't change, and you just go to different parts of the map doing the same thing over and over again. So that's the one kind of downside, is that the gameplay does not really change all that much. Yes, you have all these tools to approach it, but you kind of just always keep defaulting to the average, pick up a gun and shoot all the guys until it's over and then get out of there. It does try to change it up, though. But it's still like the tried and true methods kind of are tried and true. And because the scope of the game is so wide and broad, and the philosophy of open games is to do everything and anything, there is no section where it really forces you to do any one particular thing, and so the variety of gameplay really doesn't happen as they wanted it to. Again, there's different aspects to the game where we'll make a reprising role. The cast is a lot kind of smaller in some ways because they all kind of work on Mother Base, and there's just not as many crazy characters, and it just kind of is. I don't know. It just feels smaller in a weird way in the scope of the game and what you accomplish. Even though what you're doing in terms of gameplay is very huge, the story isn't very accelerated. Again, the main story of this game and the main antagonist, I really have trouble recalling because it really doesn't matter. It's kind of designed more as a game rather than an experience or a story. And that kind of sounds like a good thing, but it's really not, because Metal Gear can tell really amazing stories and really amazing experiences, and it's just not doing that with this one. It's just basically saying, hey, try out all our mechanics, but again, the story reason for pulling out all the stops and doing all that stuff just isn't there. The only other interesting story aspect to this game is that it's interesting why Snake also has a different voice actor this time around. It's not the classic David Hayter, but I think Kiefer Sutherland. And the naming around the characters, there actually is a reason for all of that. That also is another weird thing, and I understand why they did it, but this Snake really doesn't talk all that much. He really basically is silent for most of the game, and it's very odd because it's very unlike Snake's personality and his character, and it just feels different overall. It's a weird vibe for sure. And that's the thing fundamentally, is that even though this is a Metal Gear game and it has Metal Gear mechanics and some of the themes, overall, it just doesn't feel like a Metal Gear game. It just feels very foreign and odd and just very different from what we're used to. And the soul of it is just different. Also, another aspect to this game that is also just a problem is that it also just, in general, feels very unfinished. And it's kind of sad. There are, I think, 3 chapters to this game, or 2 even. And I remember when I got to the second chapter and it recapped everything that happened, I thought, oh my god, this game is so massive, it's going to be forever. But it has this last part where all of your enemies, all of your fellow soldiers get infected, and you have to kind of take some of them out. And then you can do the final mission, but again, it's just another side mission, and there is a cutscene and everything, but it doesn't feel like this big climactic finisher to this game. It feels like we just kind of went in a circle and nothing really happened. It's really weird. This game mechanically is so impressive, but the story and focus of it is disjointed, and I guess it really does start to reflect how modern gaming has become in this time, where you have all of these technical aspects which are very impressive, But one thing to put it all together and make it a single vision is completely absent. And because of that, it's just not a super memorable experience. It's a fun, it's a well-made game, but it's not super memorable, which is kind of the last kind of, nail in the coffin here. It's just I wish it was more interesting or had more to say. And sadly, it just doesn't. And even the ending of this game really kind of pissed some people off, because there's a big twist that comes out, and it's like, oh, okay. And it just kind of makes it feel like everything you've done is kind of for nothing. I should mention this game, I believe, also had a multiplayer component to it. You can also invade other people's bases and stuff like that, and attack their mother bases. And there's this whole online multiplayer thing about disarming all the nukes once you could develop them. And, apparently the multiplayer was actually going to be part of Chapter 3 of the game. That, it was going to be, the campaign mission was going to become all the players working around the world on the servers to disarm every nuke. And I think they did actually do that on the PS3 version of the game, I think. And there was like one hacked map or something they couldn't get into. But aside from that, they basically beat it. Again, this game just feels very rinsey, washy, and repeaty without having the story and, the story components to really back it up and make it feel like worth the time you put into this. Because you will put a lot of time into this game. It's very long, and it just takes a lot. It's also this weird thing where every side mission will have credits of who worked on it, which I just think is just kind of weird and crazy. Like, I don't need to read the same people's names over and over and over again. But there it is. But yeah, there's also multiplayer in Metal Gear Solid 4 I forgot to talk about, but it was so weird. And I think there was even multiplayer in Metal Gear Solid 3 now that I think about it. Oh, that's weird to think about. But yeah, all these games, they this is really is the middle child and probably the weakest Metal Gear game. It's definitely the most fun, I guess, but it's the least interesting. And again, the ending is just kind of a spit in the face, just a little bit. But yeah, it's just part of the Metal Gear franchise, and this is kind of where it left off, on this kind of mid-note, before God knows what Konami does with it. I mean, Konami had this weird thing where they had Metal Gear Zombies or something. I forget what it was called, but it's basically like the same engine as this game, and then they just added zombies and survival stuff to it as like a cash grab, and it was awful. Just downright awful. I barely even remember what it's called. But yeah, this is kind of the last major installment, and it's kind of all taking place during Big Boss's time in between all the other games, along with Peace Walker. So yeah, play this if you guys want, but you probably will if it's the last one in the series. But yeah, that's where Metal Gear rests today. That's it, guys. I'll see you all.